Mock Talk is now in session. Hi, my name is Christiana Garcia. I'm a high schooler with a bit of an unhealthy obsession with mock trial. And if you're watching this, I suspect you might share that same obsession. And you're in store for a treat. Because today, I'm talking with the college competitor who earned the title of the best collegiate mock trial competitor in the world, the 2025 Trial by Combat champion, Rory Banfalvi. Welcome to Mock Talk, Rory.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I just wanted to get started with saying congratulations on your win.
Thank you so much. It was honestly surreal. Starting to sink in a little bit now that it's been been a couple days, but no, it was an amazing experience.
For those who haven't watched that awesome round, would you mind introducing yourself?
Of course, I am just graduated from the University of Toronto. We're one of very few Canadian schools that participate in American mock trial. In this, of course, in the States, in AMTA, it's called American Mock Trial Association. I'm heading off to University of Toronto for law. Big surprise, this is where I did my undergrad. Other than that, there's not much about me. I've been a college competitor for all 4 years. I did a little bit of high school mock trial before that, but in Canada, it's not super big, so my experience is super limited. And then trial by combat was, of course, a dream come true. I had a good senior season and applied, and it was honestly getting the call from Professor Bernstein that I was going to be a competitor was insane. I still remember how excited I was. I can't even remember what I said to him on the phone because I was that excited. So it was an amazing experience, especially coming from a school that wasn't super dominant at American mock trial when we started about 6 or 7 years ago.
So, why were you so excited to get that call that you were in trial by combat?
So, like I said, we weren't dominant or not a couple. We really haven't been until this last year where we went to nationals. It was an amazing season for us. But because we're Canadian, we didn't have a really big American network of lawyers who could coach or help us. And so for the first couple of years, it was really us suffering through learning everything because we made mistakes. Then we had a couple series of coaches, but still a lot of my learning came from watching Trial by Combat. So the amazing competitors between 2018 and even last year, like Sam Farnsworth, for example, I still watch his rounds to prepare for my Trial by Combat rounds. So being able to be one of the people in those videos that I learned so much from, like in my entire mock trial career, was pretty surreal because I kind of thought of it like this completely different echelon of mock trial competitor that I'd probably never reach. But like when I was a freshman, I decided, that's the end goal. If I can make it there, like you've made it in mock trial. So, getting there was very full circle for me. So I was ecstatic.
So, for those who don't know, there's such thing called a triple crown. It's when basically you win all of the AMTA competitions and you specifically win an individual award. And this season, you were one of the people to actually accomplish getting a triple crown. So, what do you attribute this success to?
Honestly, time. I wouldn't have been able to do that in my freshman year. So the time of and the experience that came with it. Every round I went into and made mistakes in, I learned from. I watched footage back after every round and figured out what worked, what didn't. I read ballots. Maturity too, which kind of connects to time. The more live life, the more you experience things, the more real I think your mock trial becomes. Because that's something I think the University of Toronto likes to pride ourselves on. We're doing a little bit more of like a law school level, very realistic mock trial. And so I think that as I got older, I got more mature and it came through in the way I was presenting. So I think that definitely helped with the Triple Crown and also coaching. This year, the woman who started our program, Anna Nabotovsky, she came back to coach. And so she worked with me a lot on my presentation, specifically in my statements. And I think that's where I shine now, especially in opens. Um, and so I think that really helped this year, but it really is like, and there are competitors that get Triple Crown in their freshman year, and it's wild. And they come in out of high school being so good. But for a lot of us, it takes until our senior year to get good and to get experience enough for a Triple Crown or even something like it. So I think really it is about time and experience.
What did you tell yourself in all those rounds where maybe you didn't do so well, but you kept trekking along?
Honestly, I think our entire school's mindset towards mock trial has always been that we learn from mistakes and failures, because there's been a lot of them over the years. We've done things wrong. I've said incredibly silly things in objection battles before and watched it back and gone, oh, that could have been better. Um, but we keep this running document and we call it how we do things here. And we add what to do and what not to do. So, for example, if I have footage of an astonishingly bad objection argument that I made and I want no one to make the same error as me, I'll put it under our objection section in that document. And I will link the specific video so people can watch what I mean when I say like don't do this, and they'll note it under. So I think when I have a bad round like that, like of course there's a moment where you're like, God, that really sucked. Or, my element was the one that was a 6 and not a 10 compared to my co-counsel. So I lost the round for us. It sucks. And you have to, acknowledge that. But I think it we very quickly reframe our mindsets and it becomes learning experience. And then once it's behind us, it's behind us. So I never dwell on it for too long. And that's also like my parents were both dancers and I was too when I was younger. And so my mom had it very much like, you can sit in it for the moment, you can feel sad about it, but next time when you watch the footage back, you learn from it. It's not because of course it's something that gets you to the Triple Crown. You can't get there without making mistakes. And so you can be upset about it, but at the end of the day, it's how you learn.
So, you've competed at the national and international level. In your experience, what separates the good competitors from the really great ones you've seen?
There's a couple things. Public speaking skills. If you're doing mock trial, you have public speaking skills to begin with. And this is not to say that you need the mock trial accent or the mock trial voice. I'm sure if you've watched trial by, I know you have watched trial by combat rounds, so you see that there often is like a very particular cadence. That's not to say that you need the cadence, but you need to have a compelling speaking style. Pausing is something I think really great competitors do, and sometimes good competitors can forget to. I fell into that trap, I think, until nationals this year. I finally started pausing in my statements because it's in the silence that people actually take in what you've said. And if you're not giving them that silence, they're not hearing you. So that's one of the like very minuscule things I noticed, but that it sets people very far apart. Uh, Second, common sense arguments. Not just this doesn't work because the case says it doesn't. Because if you limit your entire case theory to what the case says or doesn't say, you're limited. But it's the competitors who do the arguments like that doesn't logically work. For example, last year with our full year AMPTA case, there was a witness that said that they saw something. But they also shared where they were standing when they saw it. But if you went into the evidence packet, you saw that there was actually 3 solid walls in between them. That's one of those common sense things where even if the case says they saw it, common sense says that they didn't. And so being able to cross-examine and say, listen, like logically, like follow me here, this doesn't work. I think that separates the good from the great because they're able to really bring you into like again that realistic mock trial style where you're like, okay, I get mock trial world, but like I'm gonna ground you for a second. Another great example of that was in the final round of like nationals this year. Both teams I think did a great job, Miami and Chicago. They both made really common sense arguments that just were about being a person and being for example, Chicago did a line of cross about being a parent and how you wouldn't entrust your kid to an untrained babysitter. So why would you do that for an employee on a machine? And it was just so simple, but most teams don't do common sense arguments like that. And so that really sets teams like Miami and Chicago apart. And so that's what I've really noticed. I think there was one other thing I was gonna say, but I can't remember it now. Oh, and thinking on your feet. Everything can't be scripted. It's never going to work in mock trial. You have to be able to make arguments, objection arguments. You have to pivot your material, be responsive. So you just have to be able to think on your feet. And that comes with time.
On Mock Talk, we like to have fun, so we're gonna play a little game. That was actually suggested by our last guest, Marvin Exantes. So, Rory, have you ever played Would You Rather?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So today we're gonna play Would You Rather Mock Trial Edition. So first off, would you rather accidentally call a judge mom multiple times during a round, or refer to yourself as the wrong side throughout the whole trial?
Definitely refer to myself as the wrong side because I have done that um in round before. Especially because like I used to do an open on defense and close on plaintiff or prosecution. So I was doing statements on both sides. I frequently got confused. So definitely the second one because I've done it before.
Speaking of statements, would you rather never give an opening statement again or never deliver a closing argument again?
Ooh, this is a good one. So I've been an opening statement gal since I was in first year. I double opened in first year. I closed in second year and then double opened on the defense last year and at Nats, and then I single opened this year. So I've done more opens in my life than closes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, ooh, this is a really good one. Because, with an opening statement, you get it over with at the beginning of trial. It's completely scripted. And so, when you deliver it and it hits and it does. Because
Mm-hmm.
you go to sit back down and like your teammates are like, yeah, that was so good. And then you never have to think about it for the rest of the round. But with a close, it's kind of weighing on you the whole time because you have to, listen to what comes out at trial and adapt. Um, my team would tell me to pick the first one, but I'm going to pick the second.
Oh,
I'd rather close. So would pick the first one. I'd rather never give an open again. Closes are just more fun. You get to comment on the
okay.
other side's case and the logic of their arguments. I love doing plaintiff and prosecution rebuttal. So I'd love to continue closing even if I couldn't open.
Would you rather only have 24 hours to prep for every competition in a season, but your teammates are past trial by combat winners like Travis Harper, Audrey Shepard, and Sam Farnsworth? Or would you rather have a week to prepare, but you don't know who your teammates are?
24 hours for sure.
24 hours?
First of all, that team would be amazing to be on. They're all insane mock trialers who I learned mock trial from. So I have no doubt it would be an awesome team. And the 24-hour prep period, it was awful. But it was awful for doing it by yourself. Of course I had my co-counsel and my coach, but I had to memorize it all. So if it was a team doing it and everyone had a share of the work and it was 24 hours, I don't think it'd be as bad as trial by combat.
Who's your mock trial like role model, if you had to say someone?
Ooh, that's a really good one. Honestly, so one of the first rounds I ever watched was um the bar TBC where they overserved someone. And one of the first ever rounds I watched was Bennett Dembski and Audrey Shepard's final. So honestly, I think Audrey Shepard. And then after I had seen that, my coach in the end of my first year, beginning of my second year, he recommended I watch Shepard to learn from her because he thought that, she was a good person for me to learn from and to look up to. So probably Audrey Shepard. She's an insane advocate. And I think she's at UCLA Law now, which is just even more proof in that she's an insane advocate. So probably her.
She's insane. Honestly, everyone on the screen, including you, amazing advocates.
Thank you.
So we've talked a lot about opening statements. Let's talk a little bit more about that. So when you're writing an opening statement, what are some rules you kind of have for yourself to write a good one?
Well, that's a really good question. I didn't have a lot of rules until this year where I kind of figured out a formula that works for me and seems to work for my teammates as well. And it's honestly the formula that I'll keep teaching as a coach. For me, of course, theme is important, incredibly important. I've started to learn the cadence that works too, but the best tell of a theme is if I can stand up and say it without laughing. Because that's how I veto themes all the time, is if it sounds silly when I say it, there's no way I'm going to make it through a trial saying it multiple times. But that being said, you start with a theme. I'm a fan of a may it please the court and then theme. I don't do the opposing counsel, your honor, members of the jury, may it please the court. I think it takes too much time. I like a short and snappy, may it please the court, almost awkwardly like long pause to really grab people's attention, and then the theme. For the pause, I don't know if you've seen Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but there's a great episode where Amy is learning how to grab people's attention as a leader, and she's told to make it almost awkwardly long as she pours a glass of water. So that's what I think about when I think about that pause, because if it's getting to the point where it's almost too long, even if people are looking down at their ballots and writing notes or something, or looking at their phone, they're going to look up because silence is awkward for everyone in the room. And so I make sure that that pause is always there. And then the story component, this is something that is part of the new formula, and it's because of my coach, Anna. She is a really big believer in a story slice that, like, you zoom in on one part of the trial and you explain it in like excruciating detail and very dramatic detail. This year we did a case about, someone who's strangled by a bowling machine. That was Arnatt's case. And so my story slice in the beginning of my close, which I would have also done if it was an open, was about, the party that was happening upstairs and how people were laughing, they were throwing bowling balls, they were drinking, it was amazing, but there was something sinister happening below. And then I described, the injury and all of that. And that was the part I decided to zoom in on. So I put that at the beginning of my open. And then after that, I usually do my legal breakdown right after my story, like, and that's why we're here today, because we've chosen to sue them for XYZ. You do the breakdown, and then I usually go into, we're going to meet our burden, or they're not going to meet their burden, because we're going to show you 2 things or 3 things. And then you usually pick, somewhat catchy names for your buckets. That's why I call them buckets. I'm a fan of the what they did, what they didn't do, why they didn't do more, especially for a negligence case. It's what I used at TBC. But anything you do, you could even do, because we're going to show you 3 simple facts: the gun, the DNA, the social media, like whatever you want to do. You can pick 3 like actual pieces of evidence, as long as you break your case up into that. That is very different from what you'll see. Again, you asked me what separated good from great before. One of the things I think separates good from great is that if you're a good team, you're doing a witness or evidence breakdown by the witness. You're saying, because you're going to hear from 3 witnesses today. First, you're going to hear from this person. They're going to tell you this. That's not how I do it anymore. I do it by evidence or argument. Like, first, we're going to show you that it was, the pie was poisoned. Then we're going to show you who did the poisoning. Then we're going to show you why they poisoned them, rather than saying witnesses. The great teams do that type of thing, where they break the case down by evidence, not by witness, at least from my observations. So I do that. I usually don't script that part. I usually leave that up to myself when I'm doing it, and this was especially true with trial by combat, because I just didn't have the brain power to memorize that much. It also allows you to be adaptive based on, especially if you're de-open, what P said. You can phrase your things a little different. And then I end it with usually another very small story slice, just like here's an example from TBC. I did, when I was on plaintiff and I was talking about, the decedent, I was like, he should have finished his night at home with his family, dreaming of victories like the rest of us got to, but he doesn't, because the city chose optics over outcome. And later today, I'm going to rise again. I'm going to ask you to find the city liable. And so you do a very small slice of the story, or like an emotional appeal into the request for a verdict. And that's the formula that I use for all my opens.
One thing I noticed about your opening automatically when I watched the trial by combat finals, it was the fact that you told such a natural story. It was like you were playing with the fact that it was taking place in Philly and that there was a football game, and you added a lot of like lingo that people actually use when talking about football games, which was a really nice touch.
You'll My co-counsel Jacob would laugh to hear you say this, because earlier in the weekend, especially my witness rounds, I had a really hard time with the lingo. I'm not a football fan. I'm also not American. And so there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that doesn't come easy to me rhetoric wise, especially for a case like that. Um, so I got done one of my witness rounds and he comes up to me and he's like, Major League Sports wins? What does that mean? And I think also I said like in my witness round, that's what we do when we win the sports. So I'm happy you think that by the final round, the lingo was there. That was I can't take credit for any of that. That was entirely my second chair, Jacob Kramer, because he actually does watch football. He plays fantasy football, and so once my coach and I had written those stories, he went back in and put the real lingo in. So I'm glad it did sound natural. I tried my best to make it sound like I was from Philly and that I watch football, but that couldn't be farther from the truth.
So now that you're officially the mock trial royalty of 2025, what's this next chapter looking like for you?
Well, 1L is coming up. So I'm starting law school in August. And I'm hoping to focus mostly on just doing 1L. Um, my school currently doesn't compete in the States in any mock trial, so I'm not sure what my mock trial future looks like, if anything at all. I'm hoping that I can get something started because I think, competing in trial advocacy is very important. And
Mhm.
I think it's an amazing teaching tool for like the practical side of law, not just the academic and philosophical side of law. So I'm hoping that my mock trial career doesn't end here, even though it would be a great end to go out on a high note. But other than law school and just focusing on my academics, I'm also gonna be back coaching the U of T team. Um, I, you know, we finally have a class of alumni with like very high level mock trial experience, and so I don't want to leave them in the lurch. Like I don't want anyone to experience what I did, which is like fighting for years to get coaches to learn the things, learn all the ins and outs. And so I want to make sure I'm there for this next class of people, especially because someone who was on my bench for 2 years, Karina, she's a star. She's amazing. And she's still there running the program. And so as long as she's there, especially, like she's just my bench mate. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna help, but I'm sure I'll help many years after that. But yeah, hopefully relaxing in the midst of all that. 'Cause it's been a long 4 years, but yeah.
Yes, I love that for you. Okay, so for anyone who is interested in diving a bit deeper into your mock trial knowledge, is there, by any chance, anywhere they could go to learn more?
Yes, there is. So with the same person who was my second chair at Trial by Combat, Jacob Kramer, the last couple of years we've run a mock trial boot camp in the summers. Um, Predominantly aimed at Canadians, but we're kind of making a little bit of a pivot now that we've, competed at higher levels in American mock trial. It's meant to introduce people at the ground level, people like me when I started mock trial that had no idea, no connections, and we try to take them from A to Z over the summer. It's called trial and error. If you look it up and then add mock trial to it, will likely come up. We're not running the boot camp this summer because, it's not only has it been a very busy summer mock trial wise for the two of us, but with trial by combat under our belt, we just have so much more we want to say. And so we want to take this summer off to, change all the material and update it for everyone because I wrote the material back when just before I was a junior and I've come a long way since then. So we won't be running the boot camp this year, but all of our asynchronous material is available. So we sell little packets and PDFs of all these lessons and exemplars to people so that they can learn. So yeah, if you're interested, it's trial and error boot camp, and it should come up. And if not, type in mock trial, and it definitely comes up.
I love that you're sharing the mock trial knowledge, and I love that name, trial and error.
Thank you, thank you.
That's actually what Mock Talk is here for, to help you all have fewer errors and more mock trial success. So Rory, I think that's a wrap for this episode of Mock Talk, all of your guys' ultimate destination for all things mock trial. Keep mocking, and I'll talk to you later.